Hello. This is the news on REN TV. In the studio, Yulia Vodenseva, my colleagues, and I will tell you about the main stories at this hour. All of Israel is under attack. While Iran steps up its strikes and threatens with new, ultra-powerful weapons, the U.S. is deploying additional forces to the Middle East and urging residents of Tehran to urgently leave the city. HIMARS missiles hit residential areas of Donetsk, launched by the Ukrainian armed forces against civilians. There are casualties and an invasion of ticks. More than half of them in several regions were found to be infected. And first, about the inhumane attack by the Ukrainian armed forces on a residential district in Donetsk. Ukrainian militants shelled the city early in the morning, presumably using American HIMARS systems. According to local authorities, at least 10 people were injured. Preliminary reports indicate there are fatalities. The main strike hit a residential building. The building is almost completely destroyed. Residents of Donetsk said that the ground shook beneath their feet from the loud explosion.
There were 5 or 6 attacks.
Yes, 5 for sure. We were all just hanging out, and then at night, boom, boom, boom. Over there, you can see smoke already, and there are 2 cars.
The blast wave shattered windows in nearby buildings, and not a single car nearby was left undamaged. We will return to this topic later. In Israel, air raid sirens sounded again this morning. Tehran launched missiles at the central regions of the country. Tel Aviv and Jerusalem were hit. Interestingly, Iran carried out a combined attack using a new tactic. First, they launched drones and a bit later missiles so that everything would hit the Iron Dome at about the same time. The main target was a military base from which Israel had struck near the building of the Iranian state television the day before. There are also reports of a hit on one of the Israeli intelligence buildings. Sedrin said that this is just the beginning. The IRGC has announced a new, devastating attack in the coming hours. Moreover, Iran is allegedly using new weapons for this purpose. Exactly what kind of weapon is being referred to has not yet been specified. Israeli cities were also hit during the night. At the same time, the Iron Dome failed again. In this video, an interceptor missile fell on Tel Aviv neighborhoods almost immediately after launch. Earlier, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. stated that the air defense systems supposedly cannot intercept only about 15% of Iran's ballistic missiles. According to reports from a breach in cyberspace, Iranian hackers managed to hack the live broadcast of one of the Israeli TV channels. By the way, some Israeli channels are now broadcasting from backup studios, fearing a missile strike from Iran. Let me remind you, the day before, an Israeli missile hit the state television building in Tehran. At least 3 journalists were killed. Conflicting footage is coming in today from the Strait of Hormuz. Almost 40% of the world's oil exports pass through it. Reportedly, 3 tankers were on fire there last night. There are no other details. Previously, Iran had threatened to shut down shipping. Experts had predicted that in this area, the price of black gold could sharply rise to $150 per barrel. China, Germany, and Argentina have strongly advised their citizens to leave Israel immediately. With every passing hour, the country is becoming more and more dangerous. Ashmid urged Russians in Israel to follow the authorities' instructions and exercise maximum caution. Diplomats reminded that Russian citizens can currently leave through Egypt and Jordan. From Iran, it is possible to leave through the border with Azerbaijan. The President of the United States also stated that it is urgently necessary to evacuate from Tehran. Today, Donald Trump left the G7 summit in Canada early, together with Secretary of State Macron Rubio. It is expected that in Washington, the president will convene the National Security Council, where, among other things, they will discuss the issue of strengthening the U.S. military presence in the Middle East. Trump's unexpected move at the summit threw off all the plans of the G7 leaders. They weren't even able to adopt a joint declaration. They also failed to collectively condemn Russia, as they had planned. Before his early departure, the U.S. president managed to publicly speak out against the anti-Russian agenda. Vitaly Shishkin will report on the failure of the first day of the G7 summit in Canada.
The photo session against the backdrop of these Canadian mountain ranges was clearly intended as a symbol of the highest level of relations within the G7. Everything was ready to immortalize the grandeur of these mountains and those who climbed them as if ascending to the political Olympus. But what ends up in the lens of history is only a tectonic rift. Trump leaves the summit of failure ahead of schedule.
Well, I have to go back. It's very important. I have to return as soon as possible.
The decision to leave as soon as possible, to get out of here almost like an evacuation, not just from these mountains, but from everyone gathered here at the very moment when Zelensky was also heading to the summit. But it seems like the US has no time for Ukraine right now. They themselves seem to be on the verge of declaring war on Iran. Although Trump never answered the direct question about possible intervention on Israel's side, leaving room for some very troubling speculation.
I think that Iran, in principle, is already at the negotiating table. They want to make a deal, and as soon as I leave here, we'll do something. I think the deal will be signed or something will happen, but the deal will be signed. I think it would be foolish for Iran not to sign it.
Just the day before, American aircraft carriers abruptly changed their positions, and the Pentagon spoke about deploying additional forces to the Middle East. And now there's also a written ultimatum to Tehran, urging evacuation. The French president probably naively assumed that this was peacemaking, which Trump supposedly went there to do, and for that he immediately got put in his place by the American president for his excessive curiosity.
The attention-seeking president of France, Emmanuel Macron, falsely claimed that I left the G7 summit in Canada to return to Washington and work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. That's not true. He has no idea why I'm heading to Washington right now, but it definitely has nothing to do with a ceasefire. It's about something much bigger. Whether he did it on purpose or not, Emmanuel always gets everything wrong.
And when Macron finally realized that the fighting could actually intensify instead, he was, surprisingly, the one who this time warned the entire Western coalition against repeating the military mistakes of the past, like what happened in Iraq and Libya during armed coups, and the violent overthrow of leaders.
I believe that nations are sovereign. They change their leaders on their own, and that all those who have tried to change regimes through strikes or military operations in the past have made strategic mistakes. Experience teaches us this, and I don't think foreign powers should be changing current political regimes.
But even the diplomatic route doesn't seem to suit them much, especially if it comes from Russia, which actually has real levers of influence. The G7 chancellor, it seems, decided to stand out in this context. They can play a role.
What do you think about the Russian president's proposal to act as a mediator between Israel and Iran? Is that serious?
Personally, I don't believe that the president of Russia can play a mediating role in this conflict.
But that's no longer the view in the White House, at least before he left. Trump scandalously derails the entire anti-Russian agenda of the summit, actually expressing regret over Moscow's absence. When was that, really?
Once, the G7 was the G8. Barack Obama and a man named Trudeau didn't want Russia to be part of it. I would say that was a mistake, and I think there wouldn't be a war now if Russia were still in the G8.
And then, sensationally, he goes on to criticize Western sanctions, admitting that they're hurting their own creators more. Because I'm waiting to see whether or not a deal is made.
When I impose sanctions on any country, it costs the US a huge amount of money. Sanctions are not a one-way street.
He completely threw the G7 off balance, and this time they didn't even adopt a summit declaration, limiting themselves to a very brief communique with extremely cautious wording, including on Russia.
Yes, there are many disagreements, and perhaps early. Trump's departure is a way to avoid open conflicts. Maybe it's a more diplomatic way out, rather than direct arguments that would later end up in the press.
Most likely, that's what Emmanuel Macron and Giorgia Meloni were whispering to each other in confusion, covering their mouths and dramatically rolling their eyes. Trump left, but the others probably just breathed a sigh of relief after that. Vitaly Shishkin, Margarita Kostev, Viktor Almatov, Alexander Sakharov, European Bureau of Izvestia, exclusively for REN TV.
While Trump risks dragging the U.S. into a new conflict in the Middle East, his former allies are still trying to clear their reputations from scandals. Elon Musk today published the results of his drug test. Surprisingly, it came back negative. With this, the billionaire seems to be hinting to the whole world that he was posting those controversial messages about the US president while being completely sober. Obviously, he deleted it later too. However, this didn't lead to any reconciliation with his former associates. Another of Trump's allies, Tucker Carlson, also came under fire. He urged the US president not to drag the country into the Iran-Israel conflict, and in response, he got insulted. Trump called him, quote, crazy. Cream. FSB officers have detained a local resident who was working for Ukrainian intelligence. Through a messenger app, he was passing on information about the locations of Russian troops and air defense systems. During the interrogation, he confessed to everything. He said that he saw a Ukrainian video online where they promised money for information, and he offered his services himself.
I sent 3 or 4 screenshots from Google Maps with markers showing where the military base was located and a screenshot of one of the air defense systems. After that, they asked me to provide photo or video evidence as confirmation.
A criminal case has been opened under the article on treason, and the detainee faces up to 20 years in prison. All across Ukraine today, military facilities were burning. Russian missiles and drones reached Kyiv. Explosions thundered in the area of the international airport. The Patriot complex crews tried to cover it. According to reports, after today's strike, there are now far fewer launchers near Kyiv. There were also hits on defense enterprises, ammunition depots, and fuel storage facilities. Air raid sirens in Ukraine barely stopped all night. Russian Garand drones were spotted in the Sumy, Poltava, and Odessa regions. Explosions also rocked the Zaporizhzhia, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zhytomyr regions. Ukrainian militants are now trying to hold on to Kupiansk at any cost. For the sake of their criminal goals, the Ukrainian armed forces are putting ordinary civilians in harm's way. These shots are the best proof of the inhumane tactics used by the Ukrainian armed forces. They have set up drone launch sites in residential neighborhoods. From these positions, Ukrainian radicals attack our soldiers. But even such blatantly cynical methods are not helping the Ukrainian armed forces stop our troops. In the Kupiansk direction, fighters of the Zapad group are advancing, with drone operators and artillery crews working in coordination. Dmitry Zemenkim is monitoring the positions.
A rare moment. Our UAV operators caught a Ukrainian tank as it was firing at Russian positions. The second. Enemy combat vehicle is destroyed while on the move. The fighters of the Zapad group are hunting Ukrainian tanks, including anti-tank guided missile operators from the 25th Army. However, their anti-tank system is also used to strike Ukrainian strongpoints.
Fire.
This is quite literally Putin shot. A soldier from the 25th Army chose this call sign for himself because his last name sounds similar to that of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. And when the enemy hears this name in radio intercepts, they get confused for a moment.
They always let you in without any trouble. So basically, you can always get in. But if you take up a position or start to pull back, that's when things change. Then the Mavics might start dropping stuff, and you could get hit by mortar or grenade launcher fire from somewhere.
The path between positions is now the riskiest, including for journalists. Right now, the device is showing that there are 2 types of drones moving near us, and one of them is an FPV. And at some point, we might have to stop the vehicles and jump into the bushes. The threat has passed, and now our howitzer division is moving out in response.
457, 30, 021.
The D-30 cannons are firing directly at the UAV control points, up to 15 kilometers away.
Fire.
And of course, their task is to support the advance of our frontline units.
We give the infantry, the assault groups, a chance to move forward, because after the artillery strikes, the enemy quiets down and, as they say, hides. And at that moment, the assault groups begin to move forward.
The West Group has improved its position in 2 directions at once. The Krasnoliman direction in the DPR and the Kupiansk direction in the Kharkiv region, to be continued. And in the 4th year of the special military operation, Our fighters have not lost their spirit and are moving forward with even more confidence because they know what they are fighting for.
My son is 16, and my daughter will turn 12 in October. Of course they ask. But what can I say? Someone has to be here to protect us all, to defend our homeland.
Dmitry Zemenkov, Kirill Pektorinsky, Konstantin Bestenesny. News, specially for REN TV.
At this moment, foreign delegations are arriving in St. Petersburg sequentially. Today is the 0th day of the International Economic Forum in the northern capital. Heated discussions are already underway. Right now, a roundtable of the Valdai Club is taking place. Representatives from India, China, and Sri Lanka have been invited. They are discussing pressing topics. The title speaks for itself. The Confused Person, How to Stop Being Afraid and Learn to Love Change.
Literally tomorrow, we will have our session, which is related to the resilience of the state. And finally, I think at the main Valdai conference, the topic of security, specifically how we exist in a world that has changed in a dramatic and significant way, will in particular be discussed.
Today, an event is also planned in honor of the anniversary of the victory. Participants will plant 80 trees. To wrap up the day, there will be a hockey cup and a fashion design contest. This year, the forum will bring together about 20,000 people from 140 countries. New rules for real estate transactions may be introduced in Russia. In particular, they want to ban buying property with cash so that all transactions are transparent and go only through banks or notaries. The Prosecutor General's office has already supported the State Duma's initiative, citing the rise in remote fraud. If the new measures are adopted, property rights can be suspended for up to 20 days if there is suspicion of fraud. There is also discussion about creating a compensation fund for victims of scams and making notarization mandatory for transactions involving elderly people. Every second tick in Primorai turned out to be a carrier of dangerous infections. The statistics are similar in Siberia. Mostly, they are finding borreliosis and other dangerous infections. According to Rospotrebnadzor, more than 300,000 Russians have already sought medical help this season. The highest numbers are in Sverdlovsk, Kemerovo, Kirov, and Tomsk regions. There aren't that many people infected with the most dangerous disease, encephalitis among them. What helps is that this year, more than 3 million Russians decided to protect themselves in advance and got vaccinated against this virus. Russian veterinary clinics have faced a shortage of rabies vaccines, a disease that is 100% fatal. The thing is, foreign medications are currently not being supplied due to sanctions, and Russian companies are not yet able to keep up with production volumes. Vladislav Tomaszowska's found out how they are trying to solve the problem.
The vaccination season for dogs and cats is in full swing. But there's nothing to inject the animals with. There are supply disruptions. The shortages of rabies vaccines started in April. First, the shelves of veterinary pharmacies were emptied, and now the ampoules have run out at the warehouses of major suppliers. Do you have any rabies vaccine?
No.
You don't? Do you mean in stock or just don't install it?
We don't have it in stock. Suppliers don't have it either.
Animal welfare volunteers were the first to speak out about the problem. In overcrowded shelters, vaccination is the only protection against outbreaks of infections. All these cats were caught on the streets of Zelenogorsk, examined and sterilized. Vaccination is, of course, a very important procedure. In the future, they will be given to private owners. For example, Simeon the cat is very gentle and tame. The rest will be returned to their original habitats. What to use to vaccinate cats and dogs is a nationwide problem. With summer vacations and holidays coming, demand for service is rising. It's not just about prevention. Without the shot, it will be impossible to take your pet out of the country. Have you encountered a shortage of vaccines? Maybe not here, but elsewhere.
I have encountered it in some veterinary clinics. I had to make several calls before coming here.
The main reason for the vaccine shortage is that foreign drugs, which used to make up half of the total supply, have left the Russian market. Some vaccines stopped being supplied due to sanctions a couple of years ago, and those that remained disappeared after stricter requirements for labeling medical products were introduced last fall.
Did you secure it well?
I don't know. Let's check now.
I'm ready.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Starting from October 1st, every ampoule must have an individual QR code and be entered into the Chesney Snack system. For manufacturers, this means additional costs and time. Foreign companies didn't manage to adapt in time, and some simply didn't want to.
There's a lack of consensus between our authorities and the authorities of the countries that supply them to us, because they're not ready to comply with the requirements set by Russell Kotsnitzer for vaccine strains.
For several months, the market relied on warehouse stock, but now those have run out. Domestic biofactories tried to fill the gap for the time being, but that takes time. There are no reserves either. Vaccines are produced in advance.
When planning production, we rely on orders from our distributors to produce the right amount of vaccine. If we produce more vaccine than the market needs, we'll have to dispose of the unsold vaccine.
By the end of the first quarter, domestic biofactories had produced almost 350,000 rabies vaccines, but even that isn't enough.
Hello.
The situation with supplies to state veterinary clinics is a little better. But because of the increased demand, the vaccine stock runs out quickly.
The polyvalent ones are Multifil for cats, Multicam for dogs, and Dipentavac. We have them in stock because we purchased them at the beginning of the year, meaning they went through the bidding process, so whether the supplier wants to or not, they have to deliver to us.
According to the most optimistic forecasts, imported vaccines might not start returning to pharmacy shelves before July. In the meantime, domestic manufacturers will try to make up for the shortage. Vladislav Tomaszewska's, Natalia Krigl, Alexandra Krivtsova, and Sergei Podlevsky, Izvestia, especially for REN TV.
They want to equate advertising export services with promoting LGBT, which is banned in Russia, and punish violators. First and foremost, this will affect bloggers who invite women from this profession for interviews, thereby popularizing it and creating an image of a glamorous and easy life. Such content misleads young people. That's why they plan to fine such advertising up to 1 million rubles. The main goal is to remove it from social media. However, exactly what will be punishable has not yet been fully determined. We'll tell you more about how the new amendments will affect bloggers' work in our upcoming episodes. What's the connection between ancient Egypt and Coco Chanel? We'll tell you in just a minute. The secrets of the underground kingdom will be revealed in Derbet, Dagestan. A unique reservoir was built there back in the 10th century, and since then its stone arches have stood the test of time and withstood the harshest forces of nature. A large-scale restoration was carried out to restore the site to its former glory. As early as this summer, thousands of tourists will be able to descend to this ancient wonder. Daniil Isaev took a look inside the cozy underground chamber.
Many people have heard of the Basilica Cistern in Istanbul, the underground palace of water built by the Byzantines. But few know that Derbent has its own, no less amazing, counterpart. This summer, it will open its doors to tourists for the very first time. For many years, this underground reservoir remained hidden from prying eyes and was virtually forgotten. The restorers started by clearing the entrances, removing years of buildup, reinforcing the masonry, restoring the drainage channels, and pumping out huge volumes of water. All of it was done by hand, so as not to damage the ancient walls.
They clang, they pump out the water. But the water here used to be 5.5 meters deep.
Is that about here visually?
It was up to here. The water was like this.
It's not just water under these stones. Here, several meters underground, one of the oldest engineering systems in Russia is hidden. This underground reservoir in Derbent was built in the 10th century when the city was in dire need of a reliable source of fresh water.
Its dimensions are about 17.5 meters long, about 7.5 meters wide, and 10.5 meters high. That's about 1,500 cubic meters. 1,500 cubic meters. That was enough to last a whole year in case of a siege. You could hold out for a long time without food, but not without water. That's why every ruler had to deal with the issue of water supply.
Unlike the Byzantine one, it isn't decorated with columns, but it impresses with its practicality and the precision of its engineering. No pumps, no pressure, just a natural slope and a mathematically calculated delivery system. 300,000 liters of water, that's how much this underground reservoir could hold. To put it in perspective, that's about 600,000 of these half-liter bottles. This amount was more than enough for the entire ancient city during times of drought and war. This is how water flowed here by gravity, through ceramic pipes from mountain springs. And from there, it was distributed throughout the city. These kinds of systems were built to last for centuries. This stonework has withstood more than one earthquake. An underground reservoir like this one served as the main water supply system for the city, since the nearest river is 15 kilometers away. The only source of water for the local residents is the springs located in the mountains. The historical route through Derbent has now become even more interesting. Local guides have already started including the underground reservoirs in their tours. For now, it's just an overview, with a story told at the entrance, but tourists' interest is growing every day.
The underground reservoir dates back to the 10th century. The deepest one is more than 10 meters deep.
If the cistern in Istanbul is a Byzantine marvel, then the one in Derbent is a legacy of the East, no less significant. Two different worlds, two great traditions. And now, there's a new point of attraction on the map of Russia for everyone interested in ancient history. Danil Isaev, Ramazan Rashidov. Izvestia, especially for REN TV.
And here's another puzzle for historians, who actually invented perfume, and what do Egyptian mummies have to do with it? All the answers are coming up right now on the program Mysteries of Humanity with Oleg Shishkin. And all the latest updates will be in our upcoming broadcasts and on the portals iz.ru and ren.tv. See you on the air.